Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. And if you dare to want to continue this conversation or any other conversation, I incite, come over to my Twitter, @MoviesTVMad. We can continue the conversation, but not on direct bloody message. Let's just talk on the news feed. Come on, everyone. DMs just freak me out. Anyway, welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. It's a brand new week. It's a brand new rumour, kind of. So, Grace Randolph is back with more kind of this DCEU Flashpoint rumour. And she's saying, in the Flash movie, in Andy Bichetti's Flash movie starring Ezra Miller, Wonder Woman, aka Gal Gadot, and Aquaman, Jason Momoa, will throw down, will do battle in the Flashpoint movie. This happens in the comics. In the Flashpoint kind of verse, in the Flashpoint story, Wonder Woman is bad. Bad to the freaking bone. She kills Mira. Yes, she kills Mira in Flashpoint. Now, of course, this is very interesting with everything that's going on with Amber Heard and her put in the studio in such a tricky situation. What are they going to do? Are they going to pretend everything in the garden is hunky-dory and keep with Amber Heard? Or are they actually going to kill her off? Now, of course, with Flashpoint gets fixed, but there are certain things within the Flashpoint verse that stay the same when Barry resets the timeline. So this is interesting. So some of the things that can stand during Flashpoint could be Mira's death. That would be very, very interesting. Flashpoint, look, why do you think they're going down the Flashpoint thing? Because they want to change certain things. They want to rewrite this universe, right? And so much for the DCEU being self-contained from now on, never going to continue. It was never going to stay, and it was never going to work. Comic book fans and movie fans and franchise consumers want to see connectivity. They want to see their favourite heroes converse and do battle with their favourite heroes and favourite villains from the comics. They don't want... Look, you can have a few standalones. You can have Birds of Prey. The DC Black Label is perfect for self-contained standalone movies. Do it there. But the DCEU needs to be revitalised. And this is exactly what Hamada and, by the way, Jeff Johns is very, very much still involved within the DCEU, but in a very unofficial capacity. He co-wrote Wonder Woman 1984. So Flashpoint is happening in Ezra Miller's and Andy Bichetti's The Flash. But Andy Bichetti has already said it's not a copy and pasting of the Flashpoint graphic novel. Why, how, when? How is this possible? I said this to you before, guys, but I'm going to tell you again. Basically, Wonder Woman 1984 is Flashpoint Part 1. Now, don't forget, this Wonder Woman versus Aquaman thing in the Flash movie comes straight from Grace Randolph. We know Grace is a little bit challenging, but there's a lot of things that she does know. She was the one who broke the news that Wonder Woman 1984 will actually have a Flashpoint element to it, right? And I can confirm that what she said still stands. It is the truth. There is a Flashpoint element in Wonder Woman 1984. Diana makes a decision that begins to skew, not dramatically, but begins to skew the timeline. So this arc continues in Andy Bichetti's Flash movie starring Ezra Miller. And then the Flash does something. And the timeline becomes totally fragmented. And as I say, in the graphic novel, we know that Diana actually kills Mira. I mean, it's very interesting because obviously some people are going to say, we don't want to see Gal's Wonder Woman be so dark and so bad. This could be a problem. This could incite criticism. But obviously, things get fixed and we get our Diana back. So if it's done tastefully and properly, I think this can work. Look, there's nothing I want to see more than Momoa and Gadot throwing down in the Flash movie. I believe this rumour's true. And look, someone could have just looked at the comics and said, let me just make this up. Of course. But it just looks like the Flashpoint paradox is the kind of direction, Walter Hamada is going here. How do you rewrite things that you feel as a studio just didn't work for the audiences, the mainstream audiences, of course for the Snyder fans, our side of it, it was great. But this is a company that wants to make money. Why they won't release the Snyder Cut and the Air Cut if they want to make money makes no sense. I don't know. But anyway, the whole point is that we are getting, a timeline rewrite here. And I'll repeat myself. So Wonder Woman 84, Wonder Woman skews the timeline, and Barry totally sends it pulsating into the stratosphere in the Flash movie. Now, I don't know if they'll call it Flashpoint, but basically, as I say, Wonder Woman 1984 is the beginning of this Flashpoint arc, and it continues in 2022 with the Flash movie. So when we look at the entire DCEU now, it's interesting to see what they're actually going to rewrite. So I believe in Wonder Woman 1984, she will skew the timeline, and we'll see a couple of differences by the end of the movie. And by the way, the test screening I saw, as I say, didn't show any of this, but they're not going to show you a test screening with all the bells and whistles, all the twists and turns. They just want to gauge a reaction, and they did. The 90 minutes I saw, as I keep on saying, amazing. So yeah, what are they going to change? I don't think we're going to see the dramatic changes until we see Andy Buscetti's Flashpoint movie, but I think we'll see delicate little changes as a little cliffhanger at the end of Wonder Woman 94. And I mean, it's been an interesting long journey since Justice League. Aquaman just mentioned Steppenwolf in the film. Aquaman made $1 billion, brilliant. Shazam made a really solid box office, pleased all the critics, a lot of the fans, and people got a lot of fun out of that movie, so that was a positive. Birds of Prey is a very, very solid R-rated movie, very enjoyable, funny, action-packed. As I say, it will slot beautifully in my DCEU collection. And by the way, just changing the subject, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, but we can look at the full picture now. Birds of Prey, or Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn only dropped off by 48% this week. That's a very small drop-off. All films drop off. All films drop off. And it is literally an impossibility, very rare, that a film goes up and doesn't drop off, right? I know some people are spreading that lie right now. Scott Mendelsohn tried to spread another lie that this film barely recovered. This film didn't barely recover because the film didn't need to recover. It had a good, solid, good opening for an R-rated movie. Only drops off 48%. It's now on 117. I think it's on 117 million globally now, is it? But once it gets released in Japan, where it hasn't been released yet, they are talking about maybe a 250 total global box office. And for a film that cost 80 million to make, that's a very good, solid. Not everything can be magnificent and groundbreaking. And as I say about Sonic, because everyone's weaponized these two films against each other, Sonic may be the most successful game movie ever made, but in terms of breaking records compared to other films, it hasn't done particularly that great. If all you're interested in is record-breaking box office, rather the content of the films. So going back to the Flashpoint arc, right? Now we know, years ago, this is what Zack Snyder wanted to do. Zack Snyder wanted to make the first Flash movie a Flashpoint movie. He had a director in mind. He had a director in mind. Warner Brothers sacked that director, and then they brought in the Lego movie and the Lego Movie 2 and the Lego Batman guys, right? I forgot their names, and they were removed very, very quickly. Snyder left, and that film was in flux constantly. Now that they've got a new line cinema, a very talented director, Andy Buscetti, he's going to do a great job. You know, think about it. Why would they use a horror movie guy? I know what you're going to say, David F. Sandberg, but this is a very prominent guy, and I think they've chosen this guy because he understands horror elements, darkness within bright spots in films. And Aquaman and Wonder Woman in Flashpoint are very, very dark, brutal characters. They are not the Arthur Curry and Diana that we know and love. They're very dark, brutal people. And as I say, in the Flashpoint Paradox graphic novel, Diana kills Mira. That's a very cold, brutal thing. And then she goes off and literally makes love to Aquaman. It's dark. It's dark stuff. And a lot of, the DCEU in the past has been criticised for the dark stuff. I love it. Bring it on. But I think the Flash movie will have, and this Flashpoint movie may be split into 2 movies. It may not be, just a little thought that I'm having. But I doubt that because they want to rewrite this timeline as quick as possible. Now, definitely, whatever happens in Wonder Woman 1984, you will see not only a few of the timeline changes by the end of Wonder Woman 1984, then you will see what it means for James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie and Matt Reeves' The Batman. There's been, again, we don't know. This is what's so exciting for me. We don't know if the Batman is actually within the DCEU premise, or if it's just in its own universe. I don't believe they're going to make this movie and say this is nothing to do with the DCEU. And I know. We've got James Gordon, who's been played by an actor of colour, and we know before a white actor was playing James Gordon in the Justice League movie. Now, that could just be a cool recast and you don't have to question it. It's still the same universe. But I think that was when he was cast, I think they were saying, well, it's not in the DCEU. As I say, I think the Flashpoint mini-skew in Wonder Woman 1984 will have direct consequences for the Batman movie, which will keep that in the DCEU. Very interesting. Of course, there is the other theory that the Batman will be R-rated and will be part of Todd Phillips' DC Black Label movies. So it could be either or. But I do think they want that film mainstream because they want to make as much money as they can. Yes, Joker made $1 billion. Just imagine if it wasn't R-rated, it could have made maybe $1.5 billion. Who knows? The world would have been their oyster. But the R rating was great. It worked for the audience who went to see. I'm certainly not criticising that decision. You can always make more money, can't you? And where does it stop? But they are trying to rewrite this timeline. There's no question about that. And you guys know how I feel about that. I did a video the other day that I said that Warner Brothers would never release Zack Snyder's full 4 hours Snyder Cut. And people were downvoting me and unsubscribing. You always kill the messenger, right? I'm just trying to say that I want to see his film. I want to see his 4 hours, by the way. I want to see it, right? I want to see his 4 hours. I'm just saying they're not going to allow it to be released. They'll cut it down to 3 hours, at least. Now, that isn't perfect, but it's still kind of his vision. But here we go. People say things, opinions, and then people cancel them. So I've been cancelled now, and I'm sorry about that. Anyway, they're rewriting the timeline. They want to make as much money. They want the DCEU and the DC cinematic universe to be as accessible to the mainstream audience as possible. So what does that long word mean? They want you young kids, you 10-year-olds, you 8-year-olds, boys and girls to say, it's Superman! Mummy, Daddy, let's go and watch that. You get what I mean? Then they want men and women to say, oh, I love Superman as a kid. I loved reading the comics. I'm going to watch Superman, right? I'm going to watch Aquaman. They want all the different demos, right, to sit there together and watch these films. And this is what wasn't happening within Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and the Suicide Squad, but it started to happen with Wonder Woman. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. And all you have to do is watch Wonder Woman to see. It's more accessible to the mainstream audience. And the demos I've just kind of described to you. So why was Wonder Woman more accessible to the mainstream audience than Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad? Well, you've got Gal. She's very accessible, and they knew her from the Fast and the Furious movies, but that wouldn't have been enough. But then you've got Chris Pine. Chris Pine is a joint lead. People love Chris Pine. They loved him as Kirk in Star Trek, whatever kind of the die-hard Trekkies say. They loved him as Captain Kirk, and he's a very accessible actor. And he's part of those films now. And Gal and Chris together was just beautiful, electric. There was a romance and things like that. galvanise the mainstream audience. As a filmmaker, as a studio, you've got to do your utmost to make sure you utilise as many butts in seats as possible. People talk about director, creative freedom, which we all want to see. And I think since Justice League, we've seen that within DC films. Look at Todd Phillips' The Joker. Look at Kathy Yan's Birds of Prey. Some people say Warner Bros. Made some decisions. They made decisions that they had to make. Because of her lack of experience, she made some errors there, and they had to be fixed. But that's normal in filmmaking. Sometimes the studio has to step in. It was different with Justice League. They stepped in for the wrong reasons. It was different with BVS and the theatrical cut. They stepped in for the wrong reasons. With Man of Steel, Nolan was standing there going, "You will not pass," right? And that's why there's not a director's cut of Man of Steel, because you've seen it. That's the man's vision. And that's Goya's and Nolan's vision of Man of Steel and how their Superman is right. I'm talking about cinematically. I'm talking about making the most money out of a comic book universe. And DC is one of the main comic book universes alongside Marvel, right? Everyone's, Warner Brothers are looking at Disney and what they're doing and how they're doing it. And they're saying, right, we tried to rush a Marvel Cinematic Universe, basically getting rid of Zack, bringing in Joss, and we thought it would be easy. It's not. We have to be slow. So they came in and they did Aquaman and Shazam, and slowly, the mainstream audiences are coming in. I won't say coming back, because the mainstream audiences were never really there for early DCEU, as much as I love BVS and Man of Steel, as you know. So a course correction, not my words, a course correction and a Flashpoint story, Wonder Woman 84 being part 1, Flashpoint part 1, and the Flash movie being Flashpoint part 2, makes perfect sense. They can change certain things and they can move this forward. And also, we're going to see the consequences of this Flashpoint story, of course, in Black Adam, with confirmation that the JSA will be in that movie. So for me, this is extremely exciting. And I want to know what you think, boys and girls, and all the other genders and the fluidities out there. I don't discriminate anyone. You are part of my family. Come to my house. Let's have a cup of tea and let's put our feet in my swimming pool. I mean, it's gone all green and dirty because it's the winter, but you're still welcome to have a beer with me. Comment down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share the video, share the channel, and I'll be back with more exciting stuff in tomorrow's DCEU Daily. See you then.